All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Couch Caucus. I'm Bree Oatman, and I am with my usual partner in crime, Amanda Bachman, and we have two special guests with us tonight. We have Susan Williams with the Transformation Project, and we have Cante Hart, who is representing the South Dakota Native Democrats, and we have invited them to talk about the different issues that they are working on related to legislation and how and to let us know how best we can advocate and for those different issues with the legislature and be better allies. And so I'm going to let them each kind of introduce themselves with a little bit more detail, and then we'll dive into the politics of what's going on in South Dakota right now. Susan, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is Susan. I'm so glad to be with you all tonight. I live in Sioux Falls, and about 1.5 years ago, I started a nonprofit called the Transformation Project. Was inspired by my son, who is transgender, to start this. And basically, our mission is to support and empower transgender youth, young adults, and their families, while also educating the state of South Dakota about gender identity and gender expression. So I felt that there were not many resources available in South Dakota when we went through this as a family. And so I tried to develop something that would help other families and other adults that were going through this and try to help. So we focus on 3 different things: supporting, empowering, and also education. And recently, we just launched another nonprofit called the Transformation Project Advocacy Network, which is the legislative arm. I mean, we're working on advocacy. We are working with lobbying and fighting anti-trans bills that come up in South Dakota.
And Cante.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's really good to be here with all of you, especially the Hughes County Democrats. And it's good to see Susan Williams again. I've met her before. So my name is Cante Hart, and Cante means heart in Lakota. And I am a Sicangu Lakota enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, as well as a Winnebago Ho-Chunk from Nebraska. And I'm also the Native Outreach Director and Field Director for the South Dakota Democratic Party. And it's the first ever permanent position to deal with Native outreach. So it's really an honor to be the first in this position and, carrying the voices of Indigenous people and connecting and building bridges with the party, because there's never really been a good relationship between the party and state governments and local governments and just government itself with tribal nations and tribal people. So it's an honor to be here with all of you. And I am working right now in legislation following a lot of bills that have to deal with Indian country. And so I'm there to communicate and to get people to come support these bills and just be as transparent as possible throughout legislative session and kind of be a bridge for everyone as far as tribal members and people who live off the reservation as well, but just to be a voice for Native people and to be in spaces, that are not meant to be for us to be in. So it's an honor to be here with you, and thank you for the invitation.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we'll go ahead and have you continue, Cante, if you want to. I know that the State of the Tribes address was given today, and so for those of you watching, our legislative session just started officially this week, and so our governor gave a State of the State address on Tuesday. We had the State of the Judiciary given yesterday, and the State of the Tribes address was given today. Can you give us a summary of kind of what the highlights of that were and kind of what are the big pressing kind of issues that that you're either hoping are going to be addressed during this legislative session that are in, basically addressing issues related to tribal sovereignty and things that you're liking to see change, and then maybe some of the things that you're kind of worried about that kind of violate those relationships.
Yes. Well, it was an honor to attend today's State of the Tribes address. It was given by Mike Faith, the Standing Rock Sioux tribal chairman, and a lot of his council and his drum group from Grand River was also there to give to sing the flag song and bring in the colors and the honor guard, and the veterans were there to bring in the flags, and so it was an honor to witness that and hear our traditional songs in the House chambers, and so that was a sight to see. Also, so what basically Chairman talked about today was just how we can help each other and how we can build bridges and work on, we may have differences, but it's important that we stay united and work together because we're all there to lead the people and we're all there working for the people. And so he wanted to expand on just being more united and talking about the pandemic and how much change has brought from the pandemic. We've had to become distant learners, doing distant learning. Everyone has had to work from home, isolate ourselves. It's sort of an emergency. They had to gather their emergency management plan, which there wasn't really one, and so we've had to create one in this time of need. And it is an emergency, and so they're working on mass testing and working with the state to get everyone tested. And right now they're focusing on getting our elders and our fluent speakers vaccinated. And so their priority right now is saving our language, because we've lost a lot of elders, and so that's like losing a history book to us. Our culture is brought down orally, and so it's important that we protect our elders at this time. We're sovereign nations, and so we have to uphold our sovereignty, which means we govern ourselves. And so we have our own government and we vote in our own tribal governments, but yet we also vote in the state governments and local governments as well. And so we need to be acknowledged as both citizens. And so we need to be included in state governments, and we need to partake and be more active and support our local governments and state legislatures. And so he also just talked about how we need to put our differences aside and we have to be willing to help each other. And so it was really meaningful coming from him, coming from a chairman who leads our people. He talked about our economic development and our infrastructure have not been great even before the pandemic. Our resources have been scarce in the beginning, and so now this pandemic has really put a damper on our resources. And so also he talked about one important bill that's coming up that I've also been working on is the Oceti Sakowin community-based schools, and that gives a chance for us to create our own schools based on the Oceti Sakowin essential understandings, which are put in place. And these are just basic knowledge that you can learn about the people of Oceti Sakowin, your neighbors and most of our people. But so these standards are not mandatory in the classroom of South Dakota, and so it's up to us to keep our culture alive and implement the learnings and teachings of our culture. And so this school will help us implement that. And so we support the creation of Oceti Sakowin community-based schools. And so I'm glad that Mike Faith mentioned that to the legislatures today. It gives us a sense of identity and to learn our Lakota language and keep our culture alive. He also talked about, alcohol and drug addictions. We have those in every community, and especially on our reservations, we have a high rate of alcohol and drug abuse. He also talked about missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives and how we have a lack of resources to combat the epidemic that's happening to our people. Our people are going missing, our people are going murdered, and we don't have resources to combat it. We don't have task force. We don't have we don't have the resources to fight it. And so that's also coming it's also a huge problem on all of our reservations. He also talked about how the legislature needs to acknowledge climate change. So I really like that as well. And basically just, how government relations were not always great. And so it's up to us to create a new relationship and to create trust between our governments. And so that's how he ended. And I liked how he's talked about just how we need to come together and put our differences aside. So I supported today's address, and I really liked that he spoke. And he also said that he can't speak for all tribes of South Dakota, but he can speak from being an indigenous leader. And so I really liked his words, and I was glad that he was there to give the address. But some things are is that I think that we do need to work on our relations, because right now the leadership that is taking place does not support our tribal sovereignty. Our reservations had to take matters into their own hands and combat the pandemic that's happening, and so we had to put up checkpoints in order to keep the virus away, and do things ourselves. And our leadership just wasn't supportive of us supporting ourselves. And so I think there could be a better relationship there. I think that we need to work together a little bit more and understand each other more and communicate more. And I think that's the whole reason why I'm in this position is to help that, and to help people be transparent about what's going on in the legislature, because a lot of people just don't know what's happening in our state house and in our state senate. And so I'm glad to be there, and I'm glad to help any way I can. If anyone has any questions about upcoming bills or wants to support anything, you can definitely send me an email, chante@sddp.org. Some other upcoming bills that we are supporting is online voter registration. We're trying to move right now. The Indian Education Department is under the State Tribal Relations Department. And so I know one of the senators was talking about getting that department moved back over underneath the Education Department. Another thing we're looking at is Medicaid expansion. Of course, we will be supporting Amendment A and 26. So we will be there to fight anything that I know they're trying to fight the marijuana bill. So we'll be there to support that. Also, we are supporting broadband, the support of broadband and internet services. Another important bill that's coming up that we've been supporting in the past is it's called 9 Little Girls, and it's to authorize the revival of certain civil claims, such as certain cases of child sexual abuse. And during the boarding school era, a lot of our children were molested, and it's not talked about, and it's a hard, subject to talk about. And so we will be supporting a certain way to appeal the statute of limitations to bring back the certain actions of child abuse, which was happening in the Catholic boarding schools. And so I know there's a huge pushback because of that. But we will be supporting that in the future. Also, there's going to be a missing and murdered Indigenous peoples bill. We're talking about modifying the Beautification Commission to there's kind of some racist artwork in the Capitol. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but we're trying to support maybe changing that to be a little less racist, and maybe could be some more native artwork. I'm not sure. A lot of these bills are really potential ideas to become bills. And so we're supporting the sports betting that has to do a lot with our tribal casinos. And so that's all I have for now. I know there will be a lot more bills coming, within the next week or so. So I will definitely keep track of that and update you on that. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I gave you my email. Also, you can reach me on Facebook or Twitter. So Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I already have a few questions for you, but I'm going to have Susan give her summary of kind of what they're looking out for, and then we'll kind of open it up to questions to both of you.
Sounds
Go
good.
ahead, Susan.
Cante, it's so good to see you again. It's been too long. Thank you so much for sharing what you're doing. That is such important work, and I'm so proud to know you and to know that you are the first to be in that position. What a legacy you will leave. That's amazing. So, legislative session is always a scary time for transgender individuals in South Dakota. As you were saying earlier, Bree, there were, 14 bills in the last 5 years that have come out that have been what we would call anti-LGBTQ plus and two-spirit bills. And so many of these bills do attack our transgender community. Most of them are leaning towards transgender youth. And so you may recall that in 2016, we had something called the bathroom bill here in South Dakota, which almost became a law had it not been for the governor's veto. We would have been having to deal with that. So last year, we gained national and international attention, unfortunately, for our HB 1057, which was a anti-trans bill that was trying to legislate kids getting any, medical help for gender dysphoria. And originally, the bill had also wanted to give doctors a felony and put them in prison for 10 years. So definitely, it's always interesting during legislative session. And so we are, Cante has wonderful bills that she's working on, and we are more in the defensive mode in stopping bad bills. This year, so far, our session is 3 days in, and we have yet to see a bill that had to do with transgender youth or any LGBTQ plus and two-spirit bills. So we're thankful for that. However, we do expect that there could be some bills this session. So we are keeping our eyes open for that. I think it's important to realize that our transgender friends and relatives really do struggle a lot during legislative session. When bills come against them, they feel like they're not welcome in their own state, and they feel discriminated against. And it often does lead to some mental health issues, maybe more depression, more anxiety during this time. So it's important to, if you do have friends that are trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming, that you reach out to them during legislative session in South Dakota and just really encourage them, let them know that you're here for them. They need to hear that they're loved, because they're definitely not feeling it from their state. So we are, possibly going to see some bills that have passed in other states last year. If you look nationwide, there are several bills that are already out in conservative states that came out kind of the first day that their state opened their legislature on Tuesday. So we're following those and watching those and preparing for what could come here in South Dakota. And as I said earlier, we have a new nonprofit, the Transformation Project Advocacy Network. So we're consciously working on how to defeat these bills and how to help allies to come around and to help us defeat those bills. So that's it.
All right. So if you are watching, if you have any questions, you can type those in the comment section on Facebook or YouTube, and we can field those questions for you to our guests. And also, if you notice in the comments, if you're just joining us, that we have included contact information, the Twitter handles for both of these organizations as a way to get a hold of Susan or Cante. We put links to the bills that Cante referenced. I'm still looking up the broadband one. It's just, you gotta scroll through the whole list of all the bill numbers to find that stuff. And then I will be putting in their email addresses as well. So if you have questions, please let us know. I think I'm gonna just my brain just totally went blank. So Amanda, do you have any questions you want to lead off with while I collect my thoughts?
Sure. So I'll throw this first one at Susan. I know you mentioned, looking at bills that are happening in other parts of the country, and I think I did see that Montana had, I think, one of the first, anti-trans bills that was, already out there. So I know we're bracing here in South Dakota like we do every year. What is, in addition to, supporting our trans, friends, neighbors, and family, what is the best way, or what's the most impactful way for people to let their legislators know where they stand on these issues? Is it email, phone calls, like showing, are we going to have Cracker Barrels this year with the pandemic? Who knows? But, what's worked in the past to get these bills defeated?
That's a great question. Thank you, Amanda. One thing that really does help is to reach out to your legislators through a phone call or getting together with them, on a Zoom or for coffee. Just letting them hear your voice, see your face, letting them know that you oppose these bills and why. Emails are a great way as well, as are handwritten letters. So I know that the sheer volume of emails that were sent last year, the senators in the last hearing of HB 1057 said they had never had emails from both sides to that effect before. There were so many, hundreds and hundreds a day of emails that they were getting. So it really does matter. Even if you think, my goodness, I don't know, does my one voice matter? It sure does. And if there's something that you're opposing, get your friends involved. So whether it's maybe on social media, forwarding something, retweeting something that you see from our site or from someone else about the bills and how they can get involved. And if you're a person that's involved in these things already, you probably in your social media are seeing these things on your feed. But there are a lot of people just in the general public that don't even know it's legislative session right now and have no idea about some of these bills or how they could help. And I was one of those people a few years ago. I had never gotten involved in anything legislative at all. I was a part of a program in South Dakota called Leadership South Dakota, and we were able to travel the state, and we spent a few days in Pierre, and I learned so much. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know where I've been. I should have been involved all this time. And I learned that you in South Dakota have direct access to your representatives and your senators, which is amazing, because in places that are, bigger states, it would be hard to even, get somebody to answer you back or to get an appointment with someone. So we're very fortunate to be in a small state with, low populated state, so that we do have access to our legislators. So if you see something pop up, let your friends know so that they can get involved too. And start building the allies around you, because they may not have a clue what's going on, but each of those voices makes a huge difference to our trans community.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
I
I'll
remember.
put the plug in for the SDLRC.
Yes. So you can. I was thinking I'll just put the general link in. Did you already put the link up?
No,
right,
so for those of
I
you
got
who
it.
are following our links in the comments, any of those bills that we've linked are going to take you to the LRC, and that's really, I mean, Susan, you kind of mentioned it too. South Dakota session happens real fast. Like we hit the ground running, and it's just a sprint for some. Had a webinar on Tuesday, I think, about how to navigate the LRC website, and Susan and Cante, I know on your social media, as far as following bills and setting up alerts, do either one of you have like specific email lists or specific ways that we can follow action alerts from your organizations on bills?
I'm still trying to navigate how I'm going to communicate everything to everyone. So I'm thinking that we're gonna have something available on our website soon. So if you just go to the sddp.org website, I'm hoping we'll have something up soon that can give updates on what's happening each week. Also, we have a Tuesday night. It's called a Transformation Tuesday, and you can also log in there. It's on our Facebook, and I believe you can sign up on our website as well, and you can tune in there to see what's also happening weekly.
And for us, if you go to our main website, which is transformationprojectsd.org, you can just submit your name as a contact, and we will send you a message about how to sign up for our texts. This is new to us. It's a new thing. We're going to do texting when there are bills dropped and action items and things like that. So if you just get us your email and your name, we will send you an email to see if you'd like to sign up for that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so if you are wondering how to use the LRC website, the link is in the comments, and there is a filter option. So you'll see like there's like a list of things you can choose from, like House bills, Senate bills, committees, and so on. And just underneath that, you'll see the little magnifying glass and it says filter. So you can type in a word. And so, for example, I typed in broadband and immediately that bill came up. And right now, and I did type in transgender just to see if any new ones had popped up, and not yet, but it's the first week. So probably I'm guessing by this weekend, there'll be a whole bunch in there. And I am this many days old that I just learned that filter trick. The last 3 years, I've just sat there and scrolled through like I'll go to the bottom list and like read and see what's been introduced. And I've lost like so many hours of sleep going through the bills. I mean, it's still helpful to see what all's out there besides just these two issues. But I can't believe I missed that little filter option until just now. Okay, so, and I will, I'll put links up again for the website so people can access that. That texting option is really nice. And the South Dakota ACLU also puts out action alerts and has an option for people to get kind of immediate alerts. And Amanda and I will do our best with this show as well every week to kind of, if we know that there's like a hot button issue coming up, that we will let people know and provide some information on how people can get involved and advocate on behalf of whatever topic it is that we're talking about. So I also put in the comments the Ocheti Sakowin standards for people that Cante was referencing. So those standards are actually something that should be taught in all schools, even in schools that are predominantly non-native students. And that is not currently happening either. And I can say as a teacher who just left the classroom in May that the criteria for teachers to be the rubber stamp that happens to say that I am culturally competent to teach in South Dakota with the Native population is basically literally a rubber stamp process. The class, you know, it's something that also I would love to see some kind of policy change about what that really means. What does it mean to be culturally competent, and what really should be happening in those courses so that it's uniform across the board. I did not take mine through a tribal college, and I really wish I had, because then I'm sure it would have been what it was supposed to be in terms of what the intent of that law is and for the certification. And I was particularly disappointed because I used to teach on a reservation in Washington State, and my graduate work was focused on how to bridge the cultural differences between Indigenous culture and Western science, because I'm a science educator. So going into that class, I was actually really excited, and especially being new to South Dakota. And I walked out of that class so angry. I actually filed a complaint with Indian Ed and the academic dean at the school, because I just was like, this is not okay. Like, this is just not the state can't rubber stamp and say these teachers are ready to prepare or to be culturally competent in the classroom if this is what they're given as their education to prepare them for that. And that was just something that I would really love to see some policy change on that. But so related to that too, then, especially in light of the State of the State address that just happened and the comments about, reforming social studies education in South Dakota, and certainly thinking about that in terms of not just U.S. history, but also clearly there's probably going to be some thinking about, how do we paint the story of South Dakota statehood? Cante, I'm wondering about, just like that issue in itself. I mean, clearly the message from my perspective is that the desire is to have a very whitewashed story that kind of continues to do what is currently happening, which is to, ignore treaty violations, to kind of ignore even like having a conversation about how all the things that happened for South Dakota to become a state in the first place and what that meant for the Indigenous people here.
Yeah, I think it's important to learn about, your neighbors and the people that you live amongst, because it says a lot of that, a lot of our history is purposely not taught in the history books. And, we learn this as Lakota children from our parents, but, non-natives don't learn this at all, the history of what happened to our people, And so I think it's important for people to educate themselves just on the history of South Dakota and the tribes. And, there's so many myths about, we get free money, we don't pay taxes, And I wish all of those were true, but it's not, And so I think it's important to, educate yourselves, because something does need to change. We need to start teaching our youth about what really happened and the history of Lakota people. We've been here for centuries, and, we were the first inhabitants of this land. And, we should be treated as royalty, but yet we're not. And so we get kind of, our voices are very silenced as we can identify.
Cante has kind of frozen, and I'm worried she might have lost. I think, did you lose connectivity with the windstorm?
Yeah, it's super windy here too. So, yeah.
All right. We lost the last bit that you were saying about just the last couple sentences.
Just letting you know that we've always been fighting for representation in our voices as well. And so that's where we become allies, is we need to help each other and work together. And so that's why I'm glad that you guys are open-minded as well and open to learning, because it's up to us to educate ourselves and the future generations.
All right, thank you. And then Susan, I guess my question to you or comment, and it's not specific to legislation, but really just kind of in terms of like just the whole conversation about being a better ally. For those of you watching, you probably noticed that we all have our pronouns in parentheses after our names. And again, as a teacher, I what I would do is I decorated my door, and I was teaching high school. So I would decorate my door all the time. It'd have different themes. And I would kind of, especially at the beginning of the year, I'd purposely give something out to each student that they would then put on the door. And I'd have them put their name on the back. And then I would say, let me know what your preferred name is. And, which could be open to interpretation. It could be a nickname, but the students who knew what I was really getting at knew what I intended by that. And then I would say, and then I would look at that, and obviously the school roster tells me what their legal name is. And then I could go up to somebody quietly and say, I noticed you put this name here. Do you have a preferred pronoun? And then I'd actually kind of started doing that too, where I'd say, let me know what your preferred pronoun is on the back of that piece of paper too. But then I could have a conversation with students privately about, are you using this preferred name in all of your classes or just my classroom? Do you want me to use that name out loud in front of students or just personally to have this kind of, do your parents know, so I would know to what extent they wanted me to support that their name and their preferred pronoun in terms of how they interact with the class. And I think for me too, as a teacher, even, I guess my thing is that you hear all the kind of knee-jerk responses about, well, I don't understand, or they isn't proper English or whatever. And it's just, I think my message, especially as a mother supporting a child who is gender nonconforming, is to say it really doesn't matter what I think. This is about me being supportive and showing love towards this other human being. And I am very clear about my preferred I have no gender dysphoria. I don't feel uncomfortable in my own body as being female. I can empathize and I can relate. But I don't fully understand at the same time. And that doesn't matter. If somebody asks me to refer to them as they, I'm going to refer to them as they. Or if they ask me to refer to them as he or she, and that is different than what information was initially provided for me, then that's what I'm going to do because that's what they've asked me to do. And so I guess if you could speak a little bit more to that in terms of that allyship and what that really means and the harm that is caused when people refuse that simple request. Susan, you're muted.
Of course I am. Okay. So Bree, you sound like the most heavenly teacher that any trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming kid could ever have. So thank you for being that person. And hopefully there are people on here who will take some of your lead and do some of the things that you've done. And I'll tell you what, it all boils down to respect. Do you respect their human dignity? Do you respect who they are and who they tell you that they are? Or do you need to be right? Do you need to be the one to tell them who they are? So just having basic respect for humanity will solve a lot of these problems. As far as some things that you can do to be a better ally, as you saw here and as Bree mentioned, we all have our pronouns on the screen. This definitely shows that you're an ally to anybody out there who may be too nervous to put their pronouns on because they're not the same pronouns that everybody thinks that they are. I would also suggest to put your pronouns in your email signature so that everybody can see that you're an ally. The other thing that I would suggest is to, if you're in education or if you're in healthcare, to have something in your office or in your classroom that would show that you are an ally. Maybe it's a rainbow buffalo sticker, or maybe it's a trans flag sticker, or something that would just signify to be a symbol that you are a true ally to people. I also would say that if you would get involved as a volunteer with any organization in the community that you're in, there are several organizations around the state that are working on LGBTQ plus and Two-Spirit equality. Just a few of them. We've got the Black Hills Center for Equality out in the Rapid area. We've got Sioux Falls Pride, Brookings Pride, Peer Area Center for Equality, Equality South Dakota, the ACLU, our organization, as well as many, many others. So getting involved as a volunteer, letting those organizations know that you're here to support them. For us, it could mean anything from sending like a bulk mailing out of our magazine. It could be organizing a phone banking evening for people to call people around the state to get them to call their senators and their representatives to tell them to vote no on a specific bill. So getting involved with the community is very helpful. And then also showing that you are an ally by standing up for things that you see that aren't right. Maybe posting on social media things that are important to you, adding your pronouns to your social media accounts. And being a friend to the marginalized people that are out there. I think one thing that I see from so many trans young adults and youth in our state is just so much loneliness and so much despair because, you know, a lot of these people have not been affirmed by their families. A lot of them have been bullied or are chastised at school. Some of these folks have trouble getting a job because they're transgender. In South Dakota, everywhere except Brookings, it's legal to fire someone just because they're transgender or to kick them out of an apartment lease because they're transgender. So coming alongside people and really supporting them would be super helpful as well. And I do want to share that we will be holding some events for allies, and they'll all be virtual. So anyone throughout the state can participate. Once we do have anti-trans legislation, we'll be doing phone banking events, and we'll also be doing online letter writing events. If you're like me and have never, hadn't ever written a letter to a legislator, it's a great opportunity to learn how to write a strongly worded letter and to share a little bit of personal story as well. So we will be offering those later on in the session.
Thank you. And I just want to point out that there was a comment suggesting that I not say preferred pronoun, but just say what name or pronoun do you use, because that implies that it's a choice, and that also then would, implies that people have the power to say, no, you can't go by that pronoun. You have to use this one. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I will just interject, Bree, because even 3 years ago, the language changes constantly. 3 years ago, the language was, what is your preferred pronoun? And that's what everybody asked. And it was shown as a sign of respect. And now it's kind of even taken as a sign of like, oh, preferred. No, this is my actual pronoun. So, you were correct, but now things have shifted a little bit with the language, language is constantly changing.
Yeah, and that I totally understand why it would make that shift. And I think actually, what's interesting is from an educator perspective, you're given a roster. It tells you all of this official legal information about these individuals in terms of their name, their gender, etc. That is like the official information. And so the word preferred, that, they and the students know coming in, like, this is who I'm officially am on the record. And so then it's kind of, so for me, then thinking about using that word too, it was really more about like, well, I know this is what the record says, but what is it that you want? And it's so, and it's that's an even bigger challenge because they're not of age to legally change anything, right? And they may or may not have supportive family members.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm appreciative about that comment, and I'm going to reframe my thinking in terms of remembering not to use that word anymore.
Well, and as an educator, Bree, though, you also do ask, what's your preferred name? Like, for me, my name is Susan, so people would maybe think I would want to be called Susie instead. So you've got that going as an educator as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so Cante, I want to throw a question at you. Back in your court for you to give us some information. So I am kind of along these same lines. Obviously, racism against Native people in South Dakota is a huge issue. And we kind of touched upon a little bit in terms of some of those institutional issues, especially within education. How can we, I one of the things I've been thinking about too, especially in terms of the work that you're doing with this new caucus to try to get more people involved and so on. Amanda and I are both involved with our county Democratic Party. It's a very white space. And, we had conversations even after the election and looking at election returns, like, Ramey and Dan pretty much kind of ran together as it was almost like they were running together on the same ticket. And yet Dan received more votes than there are registered Democrats in South Dakota, and Ramey did not. So if I'm wondering if you would like to share some thoughts about how county parties, other groups can be better at creating a space that's safer for Indigenous voices and for participation, and really to be better kind of co-conspirators in trying to get more representation in the legislature or even on like city commissions and or looking at like redistricting for legislative districts and thinking about all these issues that are kind of coming up this year, voter registration and so on.
I think just being a good ally and using your voice when needed and speaking up whenever when you hear, something going, a conversation going the wrong way, but definitely being an ally. I think that it's important to include people in spaces. Voting and politics are not really a tradition for our people, and so it's up to us to make it a new tradition and to make it important to vote, because a lot of our people are just not even educated about having to register to vote and being involved in politics. So I think voter education is important, and engagement, always including Native people in different spaces, and also just inviting people and maybe even giving someone a little nudge or a small, encouragement of like, hey, maybe you should run for office, or some people just need to be told. And I think it goes a long way, just making friends and being a Lakota person. It's important to be a good relative, and just showing respect and dignity goes a long way. And I think that if we acknowledge, put our differences aside and acknowledge how all the similarities we do have, it goes a long way. We all want to live together in this state and get along and help each other. And so I think just being an ally and using your voices and being inclusive is very important. As far as legislature and supporting us in that way, I think just keeping the communication line open and reaching out. And so I mean, if you ever need help with anything, you can always reach out to me. If you have any questions, that's what I'm here for. But I think just asking questions and acknowledging the history of our Indigenous people, and acknowledging that racism is alive and well here in Rapid City and in South Dakota. And so it's just acknowledging that there is a problem and making a change and using your voice in the capacity that you're in. So yeah, and Yeah, we all want the best for everyone, and not only just for the natives, but for everyone of South Dakota.
Thank you. Amanda, do you have any questions?
I don't have any right off the top of my head. I was just kind of scanning the comments to see if we had any more from the audience, because we are getting close to 9 o'clock. So if we don't have any questions popping in from the audience, we are sort of towards the end of our time and wrapping up. I know, like I said, session comes at folks fast, and I really recommend everyone out there watching, if you're watching it live or the recording, definitely check out the contact info that's in the comments and sign up for alerts from, these organizations or from others that are covering issues that you care about. I know when Susan said about, calls and people, your legislators knowing you, start building those relationships. The people that are in office right now, they're going to be in office this year and they're going to be in office next year as well. So this is the start of their 2-year term. So I know there's a lot of the first year legislators that maybe aren't going to be bringing a whole lot of bills, but next year when they've got 1 year under their belts, they'll be bringing more legislation, and it's important that they bring things that will be helpful to South Dakotans, and it's important that they keep their names off of things that are going to be awful. So your local representatives, it's really important.
All right.
Susan and Cante, do you have any closing thoughts before we before we head out?
Yeah, I just want to thank both of you for being active in your parties, and taking leadership roles and being active in the capacities that you are. And thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate everything you guys do, and it's an honor to be here with you three boss ladies.
And Shanti, I look forward to supporting those bills and writing my legislators to support them. And thank you, Bree and Amanda, for the important work that you're doing and for bringing these issues to light. Anti-trans bills, it's a controversial subject. It's something that, people might have looked tonight and gone, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to listen to that. But it's important that we educate ourselves on all the issues that were brought up tonight. So I appreciate you bringing that to light and giving us a voice. So thank you so much for your time.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Yes, and thank you to those of you that are watching. We will be here next week on Thursday again at 8 p.m. We're not sure what our topic will be next week. Kind of see how the week plays out. But also, if people have topics or ideas, things that they'd like us to cover, you can find us on Facebook, and you can send us a message with your ideas, or you can leave them in the comment here on the video feed. And again, the giggles in the background. Both Susan and Chante's contact information is in the comments, whether it's their Twitter handle or their email, and links to the websites that they're connected with. And again, thank you for joining us.